So right now, as to all the charges that you're facing, the maximum possible penalties are as follows. It's life in Florida State Prison, followed by 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 75 years in Florida State Prison. Do you understand the charges and the maximum possible penalties involved? Okay.
It's been years since YNW Melly was first locked up, accused of one of the darkest betrayals in rap history, murdering his own friends. But just when fans thought the case couldn't drag out any longer, shocking new details from the courtroom are making headlines again. Prosecutors are using scare tactics, judges are pressing co-defendants, and now rumors are swirling that the state is trying to pit the YNW crew against each other in a last-ditch effort to lock Melly away for life. So let's get into the latest twists in the YNW Melly trial. And trust me, this one's messy. Melly, real name Jamel Demons, has been sitting in jail since 2019. That's over 4 years without a conviction. And according to court updates, this trial could drag out for another 4. If that happens, he'll have spent nearly a decade behind bars before even hearing his final verdict. That alone has fans crying foul. In America, they say you're innocent until proven guilty, but for Melly, it feels more like guilty until proven otherwise. Now here's where it gets wild. Melly isn't the only one facing charges. His childhood friend and alleged accomplice YNW Bortlen, real name Cortland Henry, was also arrested for his role in the alleged double homicide. Prosecutors claim the two of them killed their own brothers, YNW Sack Chaser and YNW Juvie, in cold blood inside a car, then staged the scene to make it look like a drive-by. That's been the story from the state since day one. But without a confession and with conflicting evidence, the case has dragged on. Melly's first trial ended in a hung jury. 12 jurors couldn't agree whether the rapper was guilty of pulling the trigger, and that deadlock forced a mistrial. So the state switched strategies. If they couldn't convince a jury with what they had, maybe they could flip one of Melly's own friends against him. And that's exactly what they tried this week in court with YNW Bortlen. According to transcripts, prosecutors dangled a deal in front of him, plead no contest, agree to testify against Melly, and walk away with a 16-year sentence. That's a huge difference from what he's facing if he loses in trial. We're talking multiple life sentences stacked on top of each other, plus 75 years. Basically a guarantee he would die in prison. So imagine sitting in that courtroom hearing the judge calmly tell you, life, followed by life, followed by life, and if that's not enough, another 75 years. It's a scare tactic, pure and simple. They wanted him to fold. But here's the part that really makes this plea deal hit different. The offer sounds like 16 years and 3 months on paper, but that's not the reality. Bortlen's been locked up since 2019. That's over 5.5 years already gone. If he signs today, all that time gets credited. Now here's where it gets even crazier. In Florida, you don't actually serve the full sentence. By law, you serve at least 85%. So 16 years becomes about 13 years and 10 months. Subtract the 5.5 he's already done, and you're looking at maybe 8 more years inside. 8. That means instead of dying in prison on a life sentence, he could realistically be out by 2034. That's why people are watching this decision so closely. This isn't just some throwaway offer. This is the system dangling freedom in front of him, a light at the end of the tunnel if he flips on Melly. But here's the kicker. If Bortlen had taken that deal, prosecutors would have used it as evidence that Melly was guilty. In other words, it wasn't just about punishing Bortlen, it was about setting up the state's perfect witness against Melly. The courtroom exchange made headlines instantly. The judge spelled out the offer in painful detail, dropped the first-degree murder charges, reduce it to accessory after the fact, and in return serve just over 16 years in prison. The time would run concurrently, meaning all at once. Plus, he'd get credit for the time he's already served. That's the kind of deal defendants usually jump on when they know a guilty verdict is coming. But Bortlen, he didn't bite, at least not yet. In fact, both Melly and Bortlen have doubled down on their innocence, insisting they had nothing to do with the deaths of Sack Chaser and Juvie. Fans of Melly have pointed to shaky evidence, questioning why prosecutors haven't been able to secure a conviction after all these years. Meanwhile, critics argue that refusing the plea doesn't mean innocence, it might just mean loyalty, or even a gamble that the state's case will fall apart again like last time. What makes this even darker is the personal nature of the crime. We're not talking about enemies, rival gangs, or random shootings. The victims were Melly's own friends, his brothers, people he came up with, and that's why this story has haunted the rap world for years. Did one of the brightest young stars in hip-hop really turn on the people closest to him? The state says yes. They claim Melly was the shooter, that he pulled the trigger inside the car, and that Bortlen helped cover it up. They've even brought up forensic evidence, blood spatter, ballistic reports, and cell phone data to try to prove their case, but every time they present it, the defense pushes back, saying the evidence doesn't tell the full story, and that's why the offer of 16 years is so significant. It shows that the state is desperate for a win. Think about it, if prosecutors were confident, why would they offer such a light sentence for someone accused of helping cover up a double homicide? Why would they need to scare him into flipping? Because deep down they know their case isn't airtight, but make no mistake, this is high stakes poker. If Bortlen rejects the deal and goes to trial, he risks losing everything, life without parole, no second chances. Meanwhile, Melly sits in his cell, watching and waiting, knowing that his fate may depend not just on the evidence, but on whether his friend stays loyal or cracks under pressure. And let's be real, the clock is ticking. Fans online are already debating whether Bortlen will snitch. Some say he'll stay solid because he's been loyal for this long. Others argue no one can sit in a cell staring at life sentences and not think about saving themselves. It's a brutal choice. Do 16 years and eventually walk free, or roll the dice in trial and risk never touching the outside world again. Adding fuel to the fire, the judge made sure the record was crystal clear. He told Bortlen point blank, if you don't take this deal and you get convicted, you can't come back later and say your lawyers never told you. This was the court covering itself, making sure there were no loopholes for appeal if things go sideways. That's how serious they are about locking someone up in this case, whether it's Bortlen, Melly, or both. Now here's where things get really controversial. For years, fans have accused the system of railroading Melly. They point out how unusual it is for someone to sit in jail this long without a conviction. They question whether prosecutors are dragging it out because they know their evidence is weak, and every time the state tries to push a plea deal, it just feeds into that narrative. But there's another side too. Families of the victims want justice. They've waited years to see someone held accountable for Sack Chaser and Juvie's deaths. To them, these delays aren't about fairness, they're about stalling. And every failed trial, every hung jury, every deal rejected feels like salt in the wound. So what happens now? As of this latest hearing, the judge gave Bortlen more time to think. He's supposed to talk it over with his lawyers and his family, then come back to court and make a decision. Will he take the 16 years, or will he roll the dice? Meanwhile, Melly continues to fight. He hasn't taken a plea, hasn't confessed, and hasn't shown any sign of backing down. His defense team is banking on another hung jury, or maybe even an acquittal, but the risk couldn't be higher. If convicted, Melly faces multiple life sentences, no chance at parole, the end of his career, and the rest of his life spent behind bars. And that's why this case has the entire rap world watching. It's not just about one rapper, it's about loyalty, betrayal, and the lengths the system will go to secure a conviction. The question is, who's gonna crack first? Will Bortlen save himself and hand prosecutors the testimony they need to bury Melly? Or will he stay loyal, forcing the state to try once again to prove its case without him? Either way, the stakes couldn't be higher. One wrong move, one verdict, and it's all over. So tell me, do you think YNW Bortlen should take the 16 years and run, or should he stay solid and risk life in prison? And more importantly, do you think the state really has enough to convict YNW Melly? Or is this just another scare tactic to break the loyalty of two childhood friends? Because after all these years, one thing is clear. The truth about what happened that night in the car is still buried in shadows. And until someone cracks, the rap world may never know for sure.